She stood right in front of me, finger in my face, voice shaking with anger. "You don't belong here anymore. This is HOA land now." 10 years had passed since I left my father's ranch, and now that I was finally back, the first thing I saw was a woman trying to throw me off my own property. A group of her supporters stood behind her, arms crossed, waiting for me to back down. I didn't move an inch. Instead, I looked at the sign she had planted on the fence. Disputed boundary. My father built this land with his bare hands, and now some self-appointed neighborhood queen was claiming it. She leaned closer, smirking. "I've already called the authorities. You'll be removed today." For a moment, I stayed silent, just letting her believe she had won. Then I said calmly, "Karen, you just made the biggest mistake of your life." Her smirk widened when a police cruiser pulled up the gravel road. The dust rose behind it as if announcing her victory. She folded her arms and whispered loud enough for everyone to hear. "Finally, now you'll see what happens when you mess with the HOA." 2 men in uniform stepped out, but something about them didn't feel right. No badges on their belts, no proper gear, and one of them couldn't even keep his hat straight. Karen strutted toward them, pointing at me like I was some criminal. "Officer, arrest him. He's trespassing on HOA property." The so-called cop glanced at me and muttered, "Ma'am, we'll handle it." But I didn't move, didn't flinch. Instead, I pulled a folded document from my jacket pocket, the deed to this land, signed and notarized 10 years ago. Karen's confident smile cracked the moment she saw it. "That paper means nothing," she snapped, her voice suddenly sharp. "The HOA rules override everything here." I held the paper up higher, looking straight at her followers. "Funny thing about rules," I said slowly. "They don't matter when the people enforcing them aren't even real cops." The crowd behind her shifted uncomfortably, whispers running through them. One man even muttered, "They don't look like cops." Karen's face turned red and she barked at the fake officers, "Don't just stand there, do your job." The taller one stepped closer, reaching for my arm, but I didn't move. I let him get within inches before I pulled out my phone and tapped the screen. A loud beep echoed, followed by my own voice from a hidden recording. "If you set foot on my land, you'll be arrested for impersonating law enforcement." The recording had every word Karen spoke earlier too, including when she admitted calling in her own cops. Gasps went through the crowd. Karen's eyes widened as she realized I'd been recording everything since the moment I arrived. You can't do that," she stammered, her voice cracking. I stepped closer, lowering my tone so only she and her fake cops could hear. "Actually, I can. And you've just walked into a trap you'll regret for the rest of your life." Karen tried to snatch the phone from my hand, but before she could touch me, the crunch of another set of tires echoed down the dirt road. This time, it wasn't some beat-up cruiser. It was a real county sheriff's truck. The crowd turned their heads as 2 uniformed deputies stepped out, their badges gleaming under the sun. Karen froze, her arm halfway stretched toward me. She forced a laugh. "Oh, thank goodness you're here. Arrest him immediately. He's trespassing." The deputies exchanged a glance, then looked at me. One of them nodded and said calmly, "Welcome back. It's been a while." Karen blinked in confusion. "Wait, you know him?" The sheriff himself stepped forward from the truck, arms crossed. "Of course I know him," he said firmly. "This is the rightful owner of this ranch. His father worked this land before most of you even lived here." The color drained from Karen's face. She tried to speak, but all that came out was a shaky, That can't be right. The HOA, we have control." I looked straight into her eyes and said the line that made the entire crowd fall silent. "Karen, I don't think you realize who you just tried to throw off his own land." Karen's lips trembled as she tried to regain control. "No, you don't understand. These rules are higher than some old deed," she shouted, waving her arms wildly. The fake cops shifted nervously, backing away as the real deputies eyed them suspiciously. One deputy stepped closer, his hand resting on his holster. "Ma'am," he said firmly, "where exactly did you find these officers?" Karen stuttered, glancing back at them, but they said nothing. The taller one muttered, "This was a bad idea," and started walking toward his car. The sheriff stopped him with a single command. "Don't move." The tension cracked like thunder. The crowd leaned in, whispering in disbelief. Karen grabbed at straws, yelling, "He's lying! He left this place 10 years ago. He doesn't belong here anymore." Her voice broke halfway through, desperation dripping from every word. I stepped forward slowly, holding the deed high. "You're right about one thing, Karen. I did leave. But my father didn't raise a coward. I came back for a reason, and it's not just to reclaim this land. It's to expose people like you." The deputies turned toward me, clearly waiting for what I'd say next. I locked eyes with Karen, then added, "And trust me, you're not walking away from this without consequences." Karen's face twisted in panic, but she wasn't done yet. She lunged toward the sheriff, her voice shrill. "He's bluffing. Arrest him. If you don't, I'll call the HOA board and have all of you fired." The crowd gasped at her words, realizing just how far gone she was. The sheriff didn't even flinch. Instead, he pulled out a small black folder from his pocket and flipped it open. "Funny thing, Karen," he said, his tone calm but sharp. "Before coming here today, I checked the registry. This ranch, every acre of it, is still under his name. And you know what else I found? Your HOA isn't even legally recognized in this county." A heavy silence dropped over everyone. Karen staggered back a step, shaking her head violently. No, that's not true." But her own followers began to murmur, doubt spreading through them like wildfire. One of them muttered, "Wait, we've been paying dues to her all this time?" I took a slow step forward, lowering my voice so it carried weight. "Karen, it's over. You've stolen money, lied about authority, and brought fake cops onto my land. That's not power. That's fraud." Her eyes darted from the sheriff to the crowd, then back to me. For the first time, she looked afraid. Karen's fake confidence shattered like glass. She tried to laugh it off, but her voice cracked. "Fraud? Don't be ridiculous. I was just maintaining order." The sheriff's patience finally snapped. He nodded at his deputies, and in a swift motion, one of them stepped behind the fake cop and pulled his wrists into cuffs. The other deputy grabbed the second man before he could run. The crowd erupted, some shouting in anger, others recording everything on their phones. One neighbor yelled, "All this time you made us pay for nothing." Another shouted, "You threatened our kids with fake fines." The weight of her lies was crashing down around her. Karen's face turned pale as she realized she had no allies left. She pointed at me one last time, screaming, "This isn't over. You can't take this land back from the HOA." I stepped closer, my voice steady, calm, and cutting through her chaos. "Karen, you don't get it. I never lost this land. You only lost your mask." The sheriff raised his hand, silencing the crowd. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for fraud, trespassing, and impersonation. You'll answer for this in court." Her knees buckled and the deputies pulled her hands behind her back as the cuffs clicked shut. The crowd fell into stunned silence as Karen was led away, her screams fading into the distance. For the first time in years, the ranch felt quiet, like it was breathing again. Neighbors who once followed her now turned to me, shame on their faces. One older man spoke up softly. We didn't know. She told us we had no choice." I looked at them, not with anger, but with a firm calm. "You always had a choice. Fear made you forget it." The words hung heavy in the air, and several people lowered their heads. The sheriff placed a hand on my shoulder and said, "Welcome home. This land's safe now." I glanced at the worn fence my father built, the hills rolling out behind it, and felt something deep in my chest, like I was standing exactly where I was always meant to be. "My dad fought too hard for this place," I said quietly. I wasn't about to let someone like her erase his legacy. As the sun dipped behind the horizon, the crowd slowly dispersed, whispers of truth spreading through the town. The fraud was exposed, justice had spoken, and for once, the land felt free. I took one last look at the sheriff's truck pulling away, then whispered to myself, 10 years gone, but I'm finally home.